Rated M for mature. But my parents don't let me play violent video games, so I said maybe we could do something they'd approve of, like Trolls and Pixies Teach Multiplication. Rated E for everyone. Greg said, okay, forget about the Trolls and the Pixies, and let's talk about what monsters Garg and Roland are gonna face next. And he pulled a book off his shelf called Monsters of Myth, about ancient mythology, and we looked through it together. I told Greg we couldn't use any of the monsters in the book, because that would be copying somebody else's ideas. But Greg said the people who came up with those monsters died a long time ago, so anyone can use them now. Then he told me there are a lot of other characters that have been around a while, so we could use them too, like Dracula, Sherlock Holmes, Robin Hood, Tarzan, and the Tin Man. So my next chapter is going to have a bunch of monsters and other new characters in it. But I hope Greg's not pranking me on this one, because I really don't want to get sued. Chapter 6. After Roland and Garg left the tangled forest, they headed east across the salt flats. And nothing exciting happened there, so let's just fast forward to when they got to the mountains of the Razor Range. The mountains were much too steep to climb, so Roland and Garg traveled north toward the Boulder Pass. But they didn't get far, because there was a terrible thunderstorm and they had to find shelter. Luckily, there was a cave nearby, and they went inside to wait out the storm. It was dark in the cave, so Roland lit a torch. And that's when he came face to face with a Minotaur. But if you're like, uh-oh, Roland is about to get eaten by a Minotaur, well, guess what? You're wrong. It was just a statue of a Minotaur. When Roland's eyes adjusted to the torchlight, he could see that there were a bunch of other statues in the cave. Roland didn't recognize all of the statues, but he did recognize a few of them, like Huckleberry Finn, and the Cowardly Lion, and even Thor, the god of thunder. Roland thought maybe this was a museum, and they shouldn't touch anything. But Garg was pretty eager to try out his new club, and the statues gave him a good excuse. Garg smash! Roland didn't really approve because it felt like littering, and you already know how he feels about that from the last chapter. Garg was about to smash a statue of a guy holding a magnifying glass and a pipe, but all of a sudden, the statue came to life. And that's when Roland realized it wasn't a statue at all. It was the legendary detective Sherlock Holmes. Roland asked Sherlock Holmes what he was doing in this cave, and Sherlock Holmes said he was trying to solve the mystery of why so many people were going missing in the Razor Range, and the clues brought him here. Roland asked Sherlock Holmes if he ever solved the mystery, and he said yeah, everyone who went missing got turned into statues by Medusa. Well, that totally spooked Roland, and he told Garg they should get out of there. But Sherlock Holmes said to stay perfectly still, because Medusa was getting out of the shower right at that moment. So Roland and Garg and Sherlock Holmes acted like statues and closed their eyes real tight when Medusa slithered by with her snake hair hissing. But Garg must have gotten curious, because he peeked right before Medusa went into her bedroom, and he got turned into a statue. Sherlock Holmes told Roland they should hide before she came back out, so they snuck into Medusa's bathroom and closed the door behind them. But Roland wished they had snuck out the front of the cave instead, because now they were trapped. Sherlock Holmes started using his detective skills to get them out of this jam, and sure enough, he found a clue. He said Medusa didn't have a mirror in her bathroom, so that meant she couldn't look at her own reflection, or she'd get turned into a statue. Sherlock Holmes said all they needed to do was find a mirror. Roland remembered that Garg always carried one with him, because he liked to look at his muscles whenever he got a chance. So Roland snuck back out and searched through Garg's bag for the mirror. But Roland was making a lot of noise digging through the bag, and Medusa came out of her bedroom to see what was going on. When Roland found what he was looking for, he aimed the mirror at Medusa. But she must have seen this trick before, because she reflected her image back with a metal shield. Right at that moment, Sherlock Holmes stepped out of the bathroom to see what was taking Roland so long. And that's how the world's greatest detective got turned to stone. Roland knew that if he opened his eyes, he was going to be next. So when Medusa tried to trick him by saying, "Oh, look, a unicorn wearing a diaper," and "Oh, look, a gnome with 2 butts," Roland kept his eyes shut tight. Then Medusa pretended like she left the room, but Roland knew she was still there because he could hear her snakes. Roland couldn't keep his eyes shut forever, so he tried to think of what his friend, Sherlock Holmes, would do to get out of this mess. Roland thought about Medusa's angry snakes, and then he had an idea. Roland told Medusa the reason her snakes were so mad was because she was using a harsh shampoo that bothered their eyes. And then Roland told Medusa he had a travel bottle of gentle, no-tears shampoo in his bag, and maybe if she used it to wash her hair, the snakes would calm down. Well, Medusa thought this was some kind of trick, but Roland told her his parents raised him right, and he never fibs. So Medusa got the shampoo from Roland's bag and took her second shower of the day. And when Medusa came out, she sounded happy and told Roland he could open his eyes because she put sunglasses on. Roland wasn't sure how Medusa's parents raised her, and he thought this could be another trick. But Roland didn't hear the snakes hissing anymore. They were actually cooing. So he decided to trust her this time. Medusa asked Roland if she looked pretty now that her snake hair was totally relaxed. But Roland remembered his mom telling him that if you don't have anything nice to say, you shouldn't say anything at all. So that's what he did. She still seemed pretty annoyed. Greg said it was a great idea to have all those characters from classic books in the last chapter, because librarians go nuts for that stuff. Then he said if we replace Roland with a character people have actually heard of, we'd sell a lot more books. He said we could call the story The Adventures of Garg and Tom Sawyer. Greg liked having Medusa as a character because everyone would know who she was. And he said we could sell lots of toys like one that lets girls style her hair. We could call it Medusa Hair Studio. And I said maybe boys could play with it too if they liked that kind of stuff. The only thing that made Greg nervous was how Sherlock Holmes had a pipe, because he said grown-ups get touchy about that, and they might not sell the book at school fairs. But I told Greg the pipe was just part of Sherlock Holmes' detective costume, and didn't have anything in it. And Greg said we should be okay then. Chapter 7. Medusa thanked Roland for the shampoo, and told him he was free to go. But Roland knew he couldn't leave without his best friend Garg and his new friend Sherlock Holmes. Roland asked Medusa if she could turn them back to normal, but she said only a wizard could do that. And the only one she knew was the one-eyed wizard who lived in the burnt swamp. So Roland left Medusa's cave to search for the one-eyed wizard. And even though Roland was scared to be on his own for the first time, he tried to be brave for his mom. The burnt swamp was even more awful than Roland imagined, and he got totally lost. But then Roland saw a light coming from a hut, deep in the swamp, and he went toward it. Sure enough, the hut belonged to the one-eyed wizard, who told Roland to come inside and take a seat. Even though Roland's parents told him to never talk to strangers, he figured they'd let him make an exception this one time. The one-eyed wizard said he had been watching Roland for a long time in his crystal ball, and he knew all about Roland's mom and the White Warlock and Medusa and Garg and even Sherlock Holmes. And even though Roland was a little creeped out that this guy had been watching him all this time, Roland was kind of glad he didn't have to tell him the whole story from the beginning. The wizard said the White Warlock wanted to make it winter forever, and the reason he kidnapped Roland's mom was so he could make her his queen. Roland said the White Warlock couldn't make his mom his queen because she's already married to his dad. But the one-eyed wizard said the White Warlock could just snap his fingers and make his mom forget all about her old life. Then he told Roland the worst part. He said Roland would be the White Warlock's stepson, and he'd make Roland play catch with him and call him Dad. But the one-eyed wizard said there was still time to save his mom, because the White Warlock couldn't make her his queen until there was a crescent moon, and that was still 10 days away. The one-eyed wizard said the ice fortress was protected by a wall that was 20 feet thick and 30 feet high, and nobody had ever gotten through it before. But Roland knew a guy who was good at smashing things, and right now he was a statue in Medusa's cave. Greg said the new chapter was pretty boring because it was basically just two dudes talking in a swamp. But when I said maybe I could add some more action, he said I should just keep it the way it is, because this will be the scene in the movie when everyone gets up to use the bathroom and goes to refill their sodas and popcorn. Then he said the bigger problem was that there was way too many guys in the story. I said Medusa is a girl, but Greg said she doesn't really count because she's a monster. He said I need to put a few regular females in the story to give girls a reason to come see the movie, because if we don't, we'll only make half the money. Greg's other big comment was that the endless winter thing has been done a million times in other stories, and I need to change it to something else. I said maybe the White Warlock can make an endless spring instead. But Greg said that was the worst idea he ever heard because everybody likes spring. So I guess I'll just keep it winter, unless I can think of another season everyone hates. Chapter 8. When Roland and the one-eyed wizard got to Medusa's cave, she wasn't there. But she left a note that said she went off to New York City to become a model. Roland showed the one-eyed wizard the statue of Garg, and the wizard used his wand to turn him back into a regular barbarian. Kazap! The one-eyed wizard turned Sherlock Holmes back to normal too. And then the wizard kind of got on a roll and unfroze everybody else. Elf girl, kazap. Unicorn, kazap. Half man, half cow, kazap. Tiny turtle, kazap. And one-eyed alien, kazap. And when Roland saw how easy it was for the wizard to turn everyone back to normal, he felt a little bad about what happened to the statues Garg smashed. Most of the creatures hurried out of the cave in case the modeling thing didn't work out for Medusa, and she came back. But a few of them stuck around, because they wanted to thank Roland for saving them, and hear how he got there. So Roland told them about his mom, and the White Warlock, and the stuff about the endless winter. Then the elf girl said she'd come with Roland to help him rescue his mom. Then everyone else said they'd go too. And that made Roland happy, because he knew his mom would be proud of him for making so many new friends. Greg said this was another boring chapter because it was mostly